To reflect on a friendship forged through football and then carried on well beyond, please welcome Neale's long-time colleague who became a great mate and a confidant, and he is just one of the best men in football. Please welcome Chris Fagan.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to Jan and the family for giving me this privilege to stand up here and say a few words about Neale. Neale gave me a job 29 years ago. I worked out that's a long time ago, 29 years ago. God only knows why he gave me that job, but I'm so grateful that he did. We've remained close friends ever since. He's no doubt had a huge influence on my life, and I have a lot to thank him for. I think on days like this, it's important to tell stories. And I've got a few about Neale and his influence on me. A lot of people who have spoken today have already spoken about how blunt and honest he was. And I got a dose of that pretty early days when I started coaching at the D's with him. We would have training sessions and I'd do my bit as the development coach, put out the cones and help the players with their skill development and all that sort of stuff, and then we'd have meetings occasionally, and I was a bit shy when I first came over here from Tassie and I didn't have much to say in those meetings. And one day he sort of pulled me aside and he said, "Listen here, Fags, I didn't get you here just to shift the cones around." That was sort of code for I think you've got a bit more to offer than shifting the cones around. You've got some good opinions and I want to hear them. So it was good feedback to get, and that's the great thing about Neale. He wouldn't hesitate to give you that feedback, but you always knew that it come from a great place. He could give a fierce spray, which you would have heard Nita and Hoppy talk about. I always knew when he was going to go in and give those fierce sprays. And so I made sure that when I went to those team meetings, I didn't get in his line of vision. I always sat to the side because I was always worried he was going to have a crack at me. So fierce he was. He was probably at his emotional worst when we were playing Essendon, his old team, against his old coach, Kevin Sheedy. And I used to sit in the coach's box with him and he'd be off his head in those games. And I remember one day we were playing them here at the MCG, and it would have been about 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. The D's had a good lead. Nita had kicked a few goals. But the only thing we were really worried about was that what's the name of the Essendon goal kicker? Matty Lloyd. I'm getting stuck up here. Matthew Lloyd. He was on fire and he looked like he was the only threat. And I was the forward line coach at the time, and Neale said, I'm going to have to move Nita down to full back. And I thought, he's going to move Nita down to full back. We're 20 points in front. He's on fire. And I said, I don't guess it's one of your better ideas, mate. And I thought, oh, what did I just say? And he looked at me with one of those looks that only he could give, and he decided to go with me, but he said, "You better get it right, mate. You better have this right." Anyway, it was the most nervous last quarter that I've ever had in my life in a coach's box. Fortunately, we won the game. At the end of the game, Neale said, he was all happy, of course. He goes, "You want to come out for dinner with Jan and I tonight and bring Ursula along?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great, mate." We got to the dinner and he said to me, "That was good today. Well done." One of his favourite sayings, I used to go and visit him a fair bit when I've obviously been living in Brisbane the last 10 years, but I always catch up with him when I could. And he always had some advice to give me. And early days in Brisbane, it was pretty tough up there. We didn't win too many games. We won 5 games in my first year and 5 games in my second year. And I remember visiting Neale at the end of that second year, and he had a bit of advice for me. He said, "Fags, as an AFL coach, you've got to be a great actor sometimes. And I know exactly what he was talking about, because when you lose week after week after week and you're the coach, you're the one that has to stay positive and keep everybody upbeat. So he was always trying to give me those sorts of lessons to help me with my coaching. He was a fierce competitor. We used to play tennis at the Junction Oval on the clay courts down there, the assistant coaches. Neale was the best tennis player by far. In fact, he was an amazing sports person. But funnily enough, I didn't like playing as Neale's partner. I preferred to be on the other team with the other bloke, and we were definitely going to lose, but it was better to be there, because if you played with him and you made a mistake or you made a skill error, he'd just give it to you. So, yeah, I was always happy to be on the other side. We've heard today that family was super important to Neale. And I can assure you that when Ursula and I moved from Hobart to Melbourne, we didn't have any family at all here in Melbourne. And Neale and Jan went out of their way to make us feel a part of their family. And we're eternally grateful for that, because I think without that early support, maybe we wouldn't have lasted too long here in Melbourne. But as it turned out, we had 10 great years together. So thanks to Jan and Neale for that. In my office down at Brighton Homes Arena, I've got every one of the beanies from the 12 MND campaign sitting on a shelf behind my desk. I've got them there for a reason. Every time I'm feeling sorry for myself, or we've had a bad day or a loss, I look at them, and it just reminds me to push on and find a way to get better. There's a saying that I feel strongly about, and this saying is, people don't always remember what you say, but they do remember how you make them feel. Neale made me feel valued. He gave me confidence. He believed in me. He helped me sort of overcome, I suppose, my imposter syndrome, that maybe I didn't belong as a coach at AFL level because I didn't play at the level. He just did those sorts of things for me over and over again. And I'm so thankful to him for that. I still remember the day that he called me to tell me that he had MND. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what MND was. I'd not heard much about it, and I figure pretty much none of us had heard much about it until Neale came on the scene. But he told me that he had it, and he said, and that's the last time we're going to talk about it. I went back to my computer and Googled MND and discovered what it was, and how there was a fair chance that he might not be with us for much longer. And it was a bit of a shock, and I was only talking to my wife Ursula the other day when he said to me, and that's the last time we talk about it. He's continued on for 13 years. I've caught up with him over and over and over again, and not once in that 13 years has he ever talked about MND or ever complained about what was going on with him. So I figure that's absolutely amazing, because I don't think that I could show that strength that he showed. I actually don't know how he kept going. And through all that, he still remained a mentor and a coach to me. I'd often get texts from him, words of encouragement, words of advice. Better get rid of that bloke out of your team. I don't think he's helping you much, mate. All those sorts of things. But I just found that amazing that he kept doing that, even when he was dealing with what he was dealing with. So, yeah, I've been so fortunate to be a mate of his. One of my favourite moments from the 2024 Grand Final, and it's the only thing I coded from the game. You boys sitting at the front there understand coding. The only thing I coded from that game was in the last quarter, Joey Daniher, who's sitting up there, snapped a goal, and I knew it was Joey's last game, and the cameras flashed up onto the Daniher family in the stands, and there was Neale. And that's the only thing I coded from that game. It's an everlasting memory for me, or the bloke who gave me my opportunity to work first of all in the AFL, for him to be there on that day and see that, and for his nephew to kick that goal was one of those great moments in my life. Throughout my coaching career at Brisbane, I've used Neale's stories and his approach to help my boys develop resilience. I've bought every player a copy of both of his books. I don't know how many of them will actually read it, but I hope they go ahead and do that because it's invaluable information about how to live a great life. And I honestly believe too that these books should be standard textbooks in all secondary schools because there's so much to learn from all of the things that he has chosen to pass on to us through what he's learnt in going through the illness that he's had. Just to finish off, I've got three heroes in my life, my dad, my mum and Neale. They're the people who have impacted my life most in a positive sort of way. And I'd just like to finish by saying thank you to Neale for making this world a better place. Thank you.